We're live. College football show. All four of us are here. The whole crew's here. Dylan, you messed up the parlay again.
I did. And Connor, we got a problem. You sent a fake stat in the group chat.
Fake stat.
I'm not 7-3 in college football on the parlay. I was going to give Karter tons of crap because Karter, where were you on Saturday?
I was everywhere Saturday.
Where were you Saturday night?
Saturday night, I was at a college basketball game watching college football on my phone.
Nah, see, I don't know. Do we have any firsthand witnesses?
I could call my father-in-law, who was at the Kansas basketball game with me, and then got right into the car, hooked up the hotspot to the iPad, watched college football on the drive back. I had him drive to the hotel.
You're in love with his daughter, though. I think there might be some what's the word I'm looking for? Some bad
collusion?
Practice. Collusion, yes. See,
collusion.
I don't know anything about collusion.
Okay. Right.
I'm just saying, I don't know, people online questioning how dedicated you are to college football.
Well, the thing is, I woke up at 5 a.m. in Memphis, Tennessee on Saturday morning, and someone had to be boots on the ground in the SEC, so I went over to Fayetteville, Arkansas to see Texas, Arkansas play.
And what do we think?
I do not like what I saw from either team. That was my first real SEC game. I've been to a game Ben and I were at a game at Texas for the BYU game last year. First SEC game for me. It was fine. Fayetteville, really cool place. I was shocked. I was like, Arkansas, whatever, who cares? Fayetteville, Arkansas, really cool college town.
Birthplace of Walmart.
Dylan, I'm wondering. I don't know how overworked these interns are, but get the stats department on this. How are Karter and Ben's parlay picks looking once college basketball season rolls around? Because my gut tells me there's a little drop off, but I'm not sure.
Instincts would say.
Well, if the rest of us went 3-0 and the one person who despises the sport of basketball lost last week, what does that tell you?
I don't despise the sport. Listen. I have. It's been a rough year for me. I am a national champion. There is no disputing that, and I'm coming off the high. It's a national championship hangover. Last week, I understand I failed the parlay. We're getting our feet under us, though. 2 weeks left in the season. We have so much playoff football. I'm getting hot at the right time.
We're smacking a playoff parlay. I can already feel
it. We so are. How about we fill out a bracket? And I think we're going to get the perfect bracket. KarterKast bracket. Once we get to the playoff bracket, we're filling out a perfect one.
Yeah, but the bracket doesn't hit the same as it does in March.
I don't know about that. You don't know yet. You don't know.
People are going to have perfect brackets in this. And then you're going to have that one person that's like, yeah, I had a perfect college football bracket. And you're like, there's 12 teams.
But 2 times 2 times 2 to the 12th power, what are the odds? It's not as big as 32 or whatever it is in college basketball, but
you got the masters and stats. You have to have that rattle off the top of your head. You got to be like Rain Man here, Dylan.
24.
There we go. I
don't trust you.
We're going to start the show a little different today. Dylan, let's do your top 5.
I have decided to take the show more seriously. From now on.
It's only taken 3.5 years?
It only took multiple years to not become a bit. We're finally not going to be a bit show.
Well, I need it on the record. I don't care what the comments say. I do not care what the comments say. You want to say, bit, he's Ohio State hater, whatever. But now we're at week 13. We're about to get the third iteration of college football playoff rankings. It is time to take this serious. So I am going to unveil my top 5 college football teams. And this is most deserving. This is not who I think would win on a neutral field. This is most deserving.
I'm sure this is going to go over well.
This is most deserving given their records. Number 5, Alabama. Number 4, Ohio State. 3, Georgia. 2, Indiana. 1, Oregon. That's the top 5.
Time out.
I don't think I heard 4.
Yeah, what happened? What was number 4 again? It broke up a little bit.
4. Are you talking about before Georgia?
Number 4 overall.
Yeah, I think you're in a tunnel.
4.
Can't read his handwriting.
Iowa State? No.
I think it's the Buckeyes.
Ohio State, I put at number 4.
Wow.
It pains me. It pains me, but guys, there are so many bad teams in college football. The Buckeyes just find themselves up there. And I've said it all year, Ohio State fans, do not worry. They will let you down. Is it this week? Is it Big Ten championship? Is it first round, second round of the college football playoffs? I don't know, but don't worry. They will let you down, but I have them number 4.
So for people that missed it real quick, go through the rankings really fast again.
5, Alabama. 4, Ohio State. 3, Georgia. 2, Indiana. 1, Oregon.
2, Indiana.
Win your games.
Win your games.
I will say,
Where's Army?
it will figure itself out. Come on now. What we do? Beat Notre Dame and do the country a favor. Your armed forces, do the country another favor other than serving our country. Beat Notre Dame, knock them out of a college football playoff competition, then we'll have a conversation, because I don't want Notre Dame sniffing the college football playoff.
Well, bad news for you. They're ranked 6th in the AP poll right now, so it seems like some people think they should be sniffing around there. First question about the rankings. Carter, you said it, boots on the ground this week for Texas, Arkansas. Why is Texas not in your top 5, Dylan?
Guys, it took me a while to realize they have nothing. What is their best? Seriously, what is Texas's best win? We want to give Indiana and Penn State crap. Who is Texas? Is their best win at Michigan? At Oklahoma?
Yeah.
They failed their only test.
No, you're right. Like the resume, like I think it hit the country. Like everyone in the past week has been like, wait, their resume, like there's nothing there.
One. Vanderbilt.
There's
nothing
pedestal
there.
For what reason? Yeah, I think was the question people have been asking.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, but in that respect to that they still have a better win over a common opponent than Indiana.
Indiana hasn't lost a game though. Would be the caveat to that. He's talking about Michigan.
Yes.
But Texas's losses against a top 5 team. Indiana hasn't played anybody in the top 50.
It's not Indiana's fault that they don't have good Big Ten matchups.
Yeah, but when you're essentially power rating these teams at that point, why should I'm not going to sit? We did this with BYU or whatever. I just don't understand. I understand that they have a common opponent they've played, and we've seen Texas murdered Michigan on the road, and Indiana barely squeaked out of that one.
No, that's fair.
I think that's fair, but I also think we have to understand that. Okay, I'm trying to think how to properly explain this. When two teams play, there might be a favorite by how many points, and we can assume that's like what they're expected to beat a team by. But in reality, the range of possibilities, there's a certain amount you can chalk up just to the variance of football, the sport of football. And I think comparing common opponents like this, because based on that, Indiana and Ohio State shouldn't be playing next week. Indiana beat Nebraska by 1 billion points, and Ohio State barely squeaked out a win. So we can do that, and I think that's fair. I see what you're saying. We don't have much to go off of, and it will sort itself out. But for that to be the stepping stone there, and just saying, hey, well, Indiana played this one team, and Texas played this one team, and Texas played them better, or the score looked better, it's tough to make a case of who should be in and out of the playoff just based on that.
And Michigan has gotten better. Like, they're not great, but they're a more competitive team than they were in week 2.
No,
Thank you, Ben.
they're not.
They are.
They're not.
But then how do you judge that
6.
then?
They're an average team. How do I judge what?
Well, I mean, how do you judge that week 2? Like, it doesn't even have to be Michigan. Like, week 2, any team is not the same as week 10, any team.
Fair. But then, I mean, but it is the common opponent. They also played the same quarterback. Like, so am I just supposed to wipe out any week 1 or week 2 games all of a sudden?
There's a growth period. Well, we don't need to make this about Michigan, but growth period for Davis Ward.
This is what people wanted. Super conferences, 20-team conferences. Isn't that what the big wigs wanted? 20-team super conference, 3 conferences. Yeah. This is what you get. You don't play every team. So we don't really have a standard to be like, this team's better than this team. This team's better than this team. Because there's like 20 teams. You just play ring around the rosy and don't play any of the elite teams like Indiana we've seen so far. What do we have then? What do we have to compare?
Okay, but the whole thing is, Dylan, you said it'll sort itself out, and this is the overarching question of this whole discussion is, if Indiana ends up losing to Ohio State this week, do they deserve to be in the playoff?
I do deserve to be in the playoff.
Yes.
I mean, it depends how they lose, right? I'm going to have a hard time making a case for Indiana if they get, I would say if it's a 3-score game, 10-point loss, again, a little nuance there. If I think if it's like a trash time touchdown from Ohio State and they were only up 3, a little different than Indiana scoring a trash touchdown. But at face value, to me, Indiana's done enough. Now, the question would be, who do you leave out? To me, they have. And who would you leave out if you put them in with a 10-point loss to Ohio State? That's another question.
Like one of Ole Miss or Tennessee, like a 2-loss SEC team, you're going to have to leave out in favor of an Indiana with their only true test getting a loss to Ohio State. That's the problem. And those SEC 2-loss teams, I feel like in most people's minds, they know in their heart that they're better than Indiana. So then it comes down to, what do you value more? The number of losses beside a team's name, or how Indiana lost its only true test? And if Indiana loses, is it time to talk about them just being Penn State? They can beat up on the trash teams of the Big Ten, and then once they play an elite team, they just lose every time?
You say they know they're better than Indiana, but this Indiana team was supposed to be a 5-win team. Does anybody really know how good Indiana is?
Look,
I mean, they're supposed to win 6 games.
I'm on your side on this. If it comes down to a 2-loss Ole Miss or a 2-loss Tennessee or something, and Indiana's 11-1 with a competitive loss against Ohio State, they deserve to get in. I'm with you on that. But if they get stomped by Ohio State by 40 points, I don't know how much I can defend.
Yeah, that's different. I'll give you that. If it's like a 3-score, I say 20 is my magic. 21 is my magic number. If it gets ugly in Columbus and they win by 3 scores, then I think Indiana has excused themselves from the playoff conversation.
And I know because I would love to see them in the first round.
Yeah,
I would love to see it.
And we do this thing, though, like Ben mentioned it, where it's not Indiana's fault for playing their schedule, but, I mean, whose fault is it? Like, we've punished Boise State for many years for playing in the Mountain West, or even BYU, for that matter, this season in the Big 12. They've been punished for that. So, to be honest, like, and also, we've seen this in the past where if they're going to choose the best teams, I'd rather have Ole Miss than a 1-loss Indiana. I would.
Guys, you know what? I think I would, too. I don't know why we haven't thought of this yet. We should go to a 4-team playoff. That way, like, the most elite teams get in. I think that's probably the answer.
Can I offer a scenario for the 14 playoff?
Of course.
You win all of your games, 9 games. Actually, you win all of your games, but your quarterback gets injured around week 10.
Well, you're a completely different team, so I think the SEC gets precedent there.
Yeah, sorry. I like the way you think, Connor. That's why you get paid the big bucks.
You know, Indiana's wins this season in the Big Ten are against the bottom 6 in the Big Ten.
That's what I'm talking about.
We can have this talk about who we think deserves to be in the playoffs, and ultimately it comes down to what we value in a team when we rank them, what the committee values in a team, and they give guidelines that are so vague on purpose, which is totally understandable. But like something that I value that I don't think other people are going to value, and this helps the Big Ten tremendously. That's not why I value it, but I think the 2 to 3 time zone traveling, if you can win a game in that scenario, and I think instantly Penn State going to USC, I think Indiana going to UCLA, and you can win those games, I think that has to mean something as well. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. And that obviously the SEC can't really do that because all of they're still pretty geographically sequestered.
But we don't give the same credit to teams in the ACC and Big 12 for doing that.
Can you give me an example?
Okay, I would say BYU
Miami
going
to California.
Yeah, I would say BYU going from Provo down to Orlando and winning by 20 points or whatever is equally, if not more impressive than Oregon smacking Purdue, who's even worse than UCF. Just because they went across multiple time zones doesn't mean I should all of a sudden be like, yay, you're so good for beating a dog crap team.
No, but it's not
it's
like
an added challenge.
Yes.
But, but we don't give that same bonus to these other conferences. We're only giving that bonus to the Big Ten when we talk about this.
Carter, you want it? I'll give it to you. Here's the thing. I don't think anybody's giving him that bonus. I don't think anybody is. That was just me personally. I give them that bonus. And Karter, I'll give BYU the bonus. Guess what? I'm glad they lost last week. I'm tired of talking about it.
It's not even a BYU thing. It's a thing of I don't really care. Like, okay, it just depends on the opponent. Penn State at USC, I agree with. That's impressive for sure. But I don't want to hear crap about Oregon traveling multiple time zones and beating Purdue. Not all time zone travel games are created equally.
Well, sure. Obviously, you have to take into account the opponent you're playing. But does it matter to you at all that they do that? Or you're just saying it needs to be equal?
It should just be equal. It's who you're playing. All these teams travel like crazy.
I need it on record, though. I'm not denying that it's who you're playing. But like let's say we're comparing Penn State to Texas. And Penn State, they both lost their one test. And they were both at home and lost their one test. But for me, you take Texas's best win, which would be either at Michigan or at Oklahoma, Penn State having to go to USC. I would favor that win at USC more than Texas's wins against Oklahoma or Michigan.
So why should Texas be punished for being in the center of the country?
I don't know, Karter. I don't make the schedule. I can't sit here and answer that. But I'm saying that means something. It means something to me.
But why?
Because it's a disadvantage to have to travel that far. Your body, buddy. Listen, I went to a bachelor party in Las Vegas. Your body gets all out of whack.
You want to talk about travel? Are you kidding me?
No, yeah, let's talk about travel, Karter. Yeah, let's talk about travel.
Karter just drove border to border, ocean to ocean, sea to shining sea, Dylan.
I just drove 14 hours yesterday to show up here today.
To your home?
Yeah.
He showed up to work on KarterKast. That's how dedicated he is.
And I showed up for work today, but anyhow, that's a different story.
Should the top 12? You have the conference champions. You have the 12 seed, which is another conference champion. The at large, should that be the most deserving teams? Should that be the best teams? If you have a tie in the resume, do you go to who you think the best team is? How should that be sorted out? Because I think that answers this massive question that we're asking.
I think that's a good question.
I would lean best wins. If you've gone on the road in a tough environment, if you've beat a team that's was clearly better than you at the time, I think best wins should maybe account more because we've seen it. That means we've seen them perform at a high level. So if you're talking about who you want in the playoff for the product of college football, I think best wins should matter more than maybe they had a bad week one week and had to slip up against, Ohio State lost to Oregon, who's another great team. I think a best win should count more than a loss that wasn't, horrible.
So wait, real quick. With that logic, though, you're saying that Ole Miss should get in over Indiana.
If the Indiana records are even and there's a tiebreaker, I would lean towards best wins. It's tough if the records are skewed and Indiana is 10-2 versus Ole Miss who's 9-3 or 11-1 versus 10-2. Then I think that has to matter. But if it's like they're both 10-2, then I lean towards best win being the tiebreaker.
Best win. I think best win should be a little bit have a little bit more meaning. But Ben, sorry to interrupt.
I was gonna say though, I think bad losses. I almost think in a way bad losses are excused a little too much.
I think that's very fair.
I think Alabama going into Nashville and losing in the eternally constructed stadium, Vanderbilt's not bad, right? But if BYU or Indiana lost that game, the whole nation would dunk on them and crucify them. But because it's Alabama, it's they beat Georgia at home, who has since proven, although that they're still a very good team, that they have a quarterback who is just throwing the ball wherever all game. And that's killed them. It just drives me a little crazy when some teams are allowed to drop games like that and we don't really bat an eye. We make fun of them for a week and then we just kind of ignore it.
Notre Dame. Notre Dame's the prime example of all this.
That's another great example. That's an inexcusable loss. Inexcusable.
But I think the difference there is between the Alabama and BYU, Indiana, is that Alabama goes to Baton Rouge at night and they beat LSU by 29 points. They beat Missouri. We can have a discussion about Missouri. They held a Power 5 team in the SEC to 0 points. And say what you want about playing at Wisconsin. We've seen that it's a difficult place to play. Just last week, they go and beat them 42-10. So it's like, I understand what you're saying about the losses. We might give Alabama or any top tier big name SEC team a break. We cut them some slack. But are BYU and Indiana beating LSU at LSU? Are they going to take on Wisconsin and beat them as bad as they did? Are they holding Missouri to 0? I think that's the difference between having a conversation about an Alabama and heck, let's throw Penn State in there. Penn State, Indiana, and BYU.
No, Penn State deserves to be in
Miami.
there.
I'll throw Miami in there too.
Yeah, I do think though, like, you're naming those games, and like, look, I hear you, but like, what evidence do we have that beating LSU is worth a crap?
Well, to be fair, I've been out on Alabama all year, and Ben, I'm willing to concede some of these losses, like the one at Vanderbilt, some of these bad losses. I'm willing to look over those more if a team has a few good wins. I consider LSU a good win. I consider some of the other games this year good wins against quality opponents. I'm more willing to overlook a slip up against Vanderbilt if they have the quality wins. Whereas in the case of Indiana, if they have a bad loss to, let's say they lose the last week of the season to an inferior opponent, I'm less willing to look over that because they haven't had as many quality wins, if that makes sense.
That's fair. I think for me, a loss, like almost one bad loss, right, isn't the biggest deal in the world. It's when you're approaching kind of like 2. That's what I'm kind of like. Because we look at Ole Miss, losing to Kentucky is bad. And then losing at LSU isn't that bad. But we really have seen no evidence that LSU is good. I know it's hard to play at LSU, but there's no, like, the actual team itself, there's really no results that prove that they're any good at all. And, like, I think that's a difference where it's like Ole Miss, it's like, okay, I'll let you get that one. The second is where I really take issue with it. And, like, look, like, I understand where you guys are coming from. These are just kind of my points, but I also think we live in an era of college football where I think we have to accept and stomach the fact that some of this just isn't fair in terms of like, well, BYU doesn't have these good wins. Whereas like me as a BYU fan is like, well, it's not our fault that the rest of the Big 12 has been bad. Like, sorry. Like, I don't know what to say about that, but at the same time, like, I get it. It's just a rough situation in these mega conferences. You're not seeing as much equity. Even within conferences, we see Georgia play like they're just thrown the best teams in the country week after week after week. And Texas has really not had to do anything.
Going off that too, let's say if Penn State had beaten the 14th ranked team in the college football playoff rankings and the 16th ranked team in the college football playoff rankings, 14th on the road and the 16th by 30 points. Penn State would be a shoo-in right now. We wouldn't even think twice right now thinking about Penn State. BYU's done that. BYU has beaten the 14th ranked team on the road,
That's
the 16th ranked team by 30 points. So we talk about BYU doesn't have any of these wins. Well, heck, they've got 2 much better wins than what Indiana and Penn State have.
For sure. I think
Even
the one natural defense for Indiana, though, is that they're largely beating the crap out of the bad teams. And I do think that's meaningful.
But what if they're that bad, though? What if they are truly the bottom 6 team in an 18-team conference? Like, going back to college basketball, should I credit Duke for beating the Kenny Payne Louisville teams that much? No, not at all. You should. If you're going to be a college football playoff team. Dylan, you're stewing over there when I mentioned BYU having good wins.
I just think you bring up the point about Penn State, and I think that's fair. But if you want to talk about the blowout wins against Kansas State, and you want to talk about these wins, you got to talk about the 22-21 against Utah. You got to talk about the 38-35 against Oklahoma State, where they weren't very convincing. Where Penn State, for the most part, other than USC, State, off the top of my head,
Penn State won by 7 against Bowling Green.
Okay, we got that, and then you got the USC. They won by 3. They've pretty much handled their business the rest of the year, other than Ohio State.
BYU's pretty much handled their business the rest of the year. What are you saying? Like, that's the exact same argument.
Baylor,
except BYU
Baylor
has 2
one
impressive
score.
wins.
Oklahoma State a field goal. Utah 1 point. UCF 1 score. Kansas lost.
UCF,
and that's another thing too.
dramatic.
That's another thing we're sitting here talking about. Penn State's not losing to Kansas. Indiana's not losing to Kansas.
Well,
so you have great wins. That's fine. Penn State's only loss is going to be Ohio State. Hear me out. They lose to Minnesota this week too. But
okay, but I want to say that real quick. Fair. BYU should be docked for that loss. We're going to see the rankings come out tomorrow night, and BYU's going to get sent to Spirit Airlines. They're first class on Delta right now. You're getting sent.
They're
to the
going
back
straight to Nam.
Exactly.
Yeah. Florida's going to be above them.
Yeah, 100%. South Carolina. They're going to be
LSU, because we love LSU for some reason. That's a thing.
Washington State, your loss to New Mexico doesn't matter. BYU, get out.
This is
going to
work itself out. BYU's going to lose to Arizona State, and we're not going to talk about this anymore.
Exactly.
That whole conversation might be moot.
We'll talk about that game later.
That.
We'll talk about Indiana, Ohio State. Real quick, I want to paint a couple hypotheticals, and then we'll move on. We talked a lot about BYU, Indiana. This is the last thing we'll do on them, and then I want to do another hypothetical with these teams. BYU finishes out the season 11-1. Get rid of the conference title games. BYU finishes 11-1, wins against Arizona State, K-State, and SMU. Indiana finishes the season 11-1 with their one loss being to Ohio State. Who should get into the playoff?
This is simple for me. If Indiana gets stomped by Ohio State, I'm taking BYU. But if it's a 10-12 point game and it's a competitive game against Ohio State and they're one true test, I would be more willing to put in Indiana
over BYU. Why?
Because they have been, like we said earlier, throttling these teams, and if the record's the same, actually I don't know. God, I don't know, because now I'm thinking about it. BYU's wins are better. BYU's wins are better than Indiana's wins, and that was my whole argument. So if you're taking out the conference title games, maybe you're right.
But
I think
Indiana,
BYU should.
Can we agree Indiana's looked better?
But it's
and
also
Ben
who
brings
you
up the
played,
point
though.
about Ben brings up
Boise
the point about
State's looked
LSU.
better than all these teams.
Sure, I'm not going to sit here and argue.
So you're telling me
against
one
that.
spot for Indiana or BYU in that scenario, one spot.
Yes, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. There's a chance, really, there is a real world where even if BYU wins out, loses the Big 12 title game, Indiana loses to Ohio State this Saturday, there's a real world neither of them make it in, and they push A&M in if they beat Texas. They put
I would probably
Ole
take
Miss in.
BYU in that scenario, Carter. I would probably take BYU in that hypothetical, just because same record, better wins.
Yeah, exactly. And with a team like A&M, especially some of these teams that are like the 5th, 6th SEC teams, it's like we've seen you play the other SEC teams and you can't beat them. So like, what are we doing here? Like, not that they should get docked for having a harder schedule, but at the same time, right? Like, you have had the opportunity to prove that you can compete with these teams or beat these teams, and you haven't done it. I also want to add, like, just a quick counterpoint to Dylan, talking about BYU's like very close wins. I think though, if we are going to discredit or kind of go, I don't know about close wins or dock people for close wins, we should also then not care if teams are losing close games. Kansas has lost 5 of their 6 games this year by 1 possession. I just want to throw that in there. I do think that is like a relevant thing because everyone is going to want to say BYU lost to this terrible team. They should not have lost that game. I'm not excusing it, but Kansas is not a bad team. And especially they shouldn't be docked by the same standards that we don't think BYU's good. BYU hasn't convincingly won, so they're not that great. Okay, well then Kansas hasn't been getting blown out, so they're not that bad.
I think that's more than fair, but I don't think you can convince me that Indiana, Penn State, Texas are losing to Kansas.
And that's just what the whole thing boils down to, is like, you can't convince me this. If they played, this would happen. They're not going to play, so we're not going to know. And that's the pain of being on the committee and the pain of arguing about all of this for the 12-team playoff is if you put them against them, then they would definitely win. There's no way they would lose. We'll never know for sure.
And
all
also,
we have is what we have to go off of. We can't go off what ifs.
And it's like I can't convince Dylan otherwise. Just sort of like, all right, fair. If you feel that way, like,
Well, you
right,
can't
like
convince
that,
Dylan anyways of anything.
No. But my point is though, like he says, I don't believe these 3 teams would lose to Kansas. It's like, well,
That's your vote.
you know, I can't. Like,
Can't
there's
prove
nothing
it.
I could do about that. Not saying it's a dumb opinion. It's just like,
Yeah,
just
there's
how
nothing
it
we
is.
can do
Can't
about
convince.
it.
Yeah.
But the other thing with BYU is, Dylan, you mentioned this multiple times, and we can move on to some other stuff. The BYU thing won't matter because the Big 12 has already dug themselves a hole where it's one team in. The winner in Dallas is going to
And
get
you
in,
know
so
who
it
it
doesn't
is?
matter.
It's Colorado. If there's any path for Colorado to get in, that committee is putting them in.
We are going to see all-time jerry rigging, the worst kind of officiating you've seen in your
Gerrymandering
life.
for the college football playoff.
Brett Yormark is going to call and be like, I don't care who Colorado's playing. You better make sure they get in the playoff. You better make sure they get to the playoff right now.
It's like, hey, Mr. Committee, why'd you put Colorado in? It's like, Mr. Krabs, money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, while we're on Colorado, can I call something out real quick?
Please.
Everybody see Travis Hunter hit the Heisman pose?
Yeah.
After an interception, yeah.
Biggest Mandela effect we've ever been subject to believe is
The
that
one foot up.
the Heisman Trophy has 1 foot up. We can thank Desmond Howard for that. I had to check that myself. There is no foot up on the Heisman Trophy. Do you guys know that?
Which is funny because I close my eyes and I see the Heisman Trophy and I see the foot up on the Heisman Trophy.
I see
You know
the
what I
foot
mean?
up, Ben.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I see
saw
it
on
too.
I saw that post on X and I had to do a double take. I was like, wait a second. The Heisman Trophy doesn't have his foot up, but no, both on the ground. And may I say, the gentleman on the trophy, I'm assuming his last name was Heisman, very flexible. No shot I could do. No shot.
That's a good
I love
point.
it.
That was good.
I love it. A few other things, rapid fire real quick. Texas loses to A&M or loses to Kentucky or A&M. They're out, right?
Smell ya.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
shot.
100%.
Now, wait a second. I'm not too abreast with this. Is there a way that Texas, what's Texas's situation for the conference championship?
They have to win out.
They have to win out to be able to make, okay, so then, yeah,
Georgia-
they're out.
Georgia doesn't have another conference game. If Texas loses one more, then Georgia takes their spot into the SEC title game.
Okay. All right, yeah.
Then Texas is out 100%. Because I would take like a 2-loss Ole Miss team over Texas at that point because one of Texas's wins. Yeah.
And then the other thing is, let's say Texas makes it to the SEC title game. They have that win against A&M at A&M. They lose to Alabama in the SEC title game. Should they be docked at all for that?
I think the conference title games are going to have a big caveat with the 12-team playoff because it's like, okay, so are we going to punish you for winning and making it to the conference title game, but then a 2-loss SEC team that didn't make the conference title game, we're going to push them in because now the records are the same or you have one more win? I think my opinion on all that is flipped. I think conference title games, I don't think you get docked for those. You, at least in favor of a team in the same conference doesn't make it, and that's what's going to happen in the SEC.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's going to be extremely tough for the committee to rationalize publicly the decision to keep a conference runner-up out and then bring in somebody else from the conference.
No, you know what's going to happen is the loser of the SEC title game is going to get booted in favor of a Texas team that maybe missed out and has 2 losses. I can easily see that happening. I think that's horrible.
I would love to see the precedent set that the SEC runner-up doesn't make the playoff, because I would love to see
Tanking?
what people would do. No. They make the conference championship the next year, and they just go, no, we're not going to go.
Opt
Yeah,
out.
like, we're not playing.
Conference title game.
There you
I
go.
mean, right? At that point, why not? Frankly.
Another thing I wanted to ask you guys, and this is something I've kind of been too scared to admit. Does anybody understand tiebreakers in this sport within conferences?
No.
The SEC, if you look it up, before last week, there was like a chance for an 8-way tie for first place before last week. And I tried to make sense of the article. I read like 3 paragraphs. I was like, I don't care. Like, genuinely. I'll
like,
talk about these teams without knowing.
If their shoes are upside down and it is high tide in the West, that then this team that is third that won their highest strength of schedule game would move along up until this point. It's
time
nonsense.
zone differences. Let's not forget that. That's got to be part of the tiebreaker,
That's
right,
true.
guys?
Time zone differences. I think we have to.
Hours flowing.
Consider who the coaches of the teams voted for and what they had for breakfast that morning too.
You know what, Dylan? You know what? To add to that, I think the tiebreaker should just be based on penalty yardage.
Oh, I love it. The least penalized. Don't give us a bad product. Do not give us a bad product. We want disciplined football on the national stage.
And up next, BYU versus Notre Dame on ESPN.
Shoot.
All right, I'm trying to think if I had any other questions rolling through here. Does Tennessee get docked at all for their loss this weekend to Georgia?
I think you have to dock them. It's just a matter of how much, maybe.
You know my question, and I'm going to ask you guys this. It's going to come down to Tennessee versus Ole Miss for one of the at-large bids, and they're both going to have 2 losses. What do you do at that point?
Yeah. Make a play-in game. There we go. I just made ESPN a couple mil.
A committee created. They just have the right to just create games.
Flip a coin.
That's thin air.
It's a BYU Coastal Carolina situation. To answer your question, Connor, I would put Ole Miss in at that point.
Because they beat Georgia, who then beat Tennessee. Is that your argument? 'Cause I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
And they both have a big blemish on their, they both have a bad loss on their resume. Arkansas and Kentucky, I would say they're fairly equal in where they are in SEC standards. And then I think Ole Miss's win against Georgia is slightly better than Tennessee's win against Alabama, just because Ole Miss kind of destroyed Georgia.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up devil's advocate would be Bama beat Georgia.
Yeah,
right?
but
You're talking about margin of victory at that point.
yeah, I think margin of victory would matter because Tennessee barely pulled that one out, and Ole Miss absolutely handled Georgia.
Let's get into the weeds. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky at Ole Miss. Tennessee loses to Arkansas at Arkansas.
Oh, man.
Fair.
I don't envy the people who have to make that
probably
decision.
Ole Miss. Yeah.
We'll see. Ole Miss has to win out still. This is not a guarantee.
I thought all this was supposed to go away with 12-team playoff.
No, this is no. This
It
is
just
what we
creates more
wanted.
discussion. Yeah, more teams are in play.
This is so much better than last year being like, should Jordan Travis and FSU get in or Georgia? And that's the show.
And that's it. Yep, I completely agree.
But then, right, you can't. If we're arguing about 12 and 13, it's like at that point, if you're 13, it's like, look, you didn't really have a shot anyway.
Yeah, because the problem
You
would
weren't
be
going to win the title.
If an undefeated Boise didn't get in, or a one-loss Boise didn't get in over a 2-3 loss SEC team, that's when I would be like, okay, what the crap is happening here? Should we punish Boise for scheduling the Oregon game? No. They also had a close game against them, who are going to end up being the number 1 team in the college football playoff probably when it's all said and done. So, anyhow, any other thoughts before we start previewing some games?
BYU has a chance for another quality win this weekend, one that we didn't think would be a quality win coming into the year. So I'm very interested to see how that goes.
We'll talk
But if they
about
win
that
by
in a little
3,
bit.
it doesn't count.
Oh, hold on.
All right, if we're going to say it doesn't matter how you win, then just remember that when we're doing previews next year and we have another Oregon winning by 3 against Boise State. It doesn't matter how you win.
No,
Just saying.
Dylan. That I want to be fair. That came across as a shot at you. It was not.
I don't know. I've seen
That-
a lot of
it's more a
anti-Dylan.
national thing.
Ben,
No,
take
it's not.
Dylan.
It's not. It's not.
Take shots at me. I'm wearing a Kevlar vest. It's
just,
okay.
It's just I've been
know
hearing
worse
it
than the
everywhere,
commenters.
so I just had to throw that out there.
Last thing, I promise. This is more for Dylan, and this will bleed into our preview. If Ohio State gets upset by Indiana this week, they are out of the college football playoff. They're out of the college football playoff, right?
Oh, brother.
Because they wouldn't make the
Yeah.
conference title game if they lose, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't,
and their only win would be against a team who's also beaten no one.
but so then, based on that, Penn State no shot with 1 loss to Ohio State.
Well, then it becomes.
That's where it gets hairy.
Yeah, that is where it gets hairy.
I would probably put Penn State with 1 loss. Well, actually, man.
Yeah,
hold on.
That's where it gets hairy. It's like, how much does the head? And to me, when I did my rankings, and I know I didn't go through this, so I did my top 5. I did 5 Alabama, 4 Ohio State, 3 Georgia, 2 Indiana, 1 Oregon, 6 Penn State, 7 Texas, 8 Tennessee, 9 BYU, 10 Miami. I think the point I wanted to make here is head-to-head matters to a certain extent, But you see, I have Alabama over Tennessee, where, Tennessee beat Alabama, but Alabama beat Georgia pretty convincingly, at least what it looked like. It's just going to be interesting. I say all that to say, how are they going to handle the head-to-head when you do have a scenario where Ohio State's 2 losses are to Penn State on the road, Indiana, and now you're stuck leaving Ohio State out, and are you also going to leave out Penn State?
Dylan, who are you putting in that scenario? Penn State 1 loss to Ohio State versus Ohio State with 2 losses. Who are you leaving out? Come on, I know you want to say it.
If Indiana beats Ohio State, I would think I would have seen enough to where I could say that I can't do it. It's like I seriously want to say, like, Ohio State has had times this year they have not looked good. I think first quarter last week, Nebraska game. You can say what you want about a 1-point loss against Oregon, but they did not look good that whole game. Penn State, outside of a half against Ohio State, I don't know. I want this to happen so bad.
I want this to happen so bad.
I would say Ohio State. And then you could get even hairier. No, that wouldn't make sense. I was going to say, do you put...
in that scenario, it has to be Ohio State. The head-to-head has to matter at some point.
I think so, too.
But you're a big head-to-head guy. I don't... The best team doesn't always win, and you know that.
But if you played each other, that should matter.
The result has to matter. If you play each other one time during the season and all of a sudden that's the head-to-head to get into the playoff.
Yeah, but when most things are equal and then you guys played head-to-head, why should that not matter?
That should hold the most weight. I agree with that, Carter.
2021, 12 overtime game. Illinois beats Penn State. Illinois is the better team? They're more deserving?
If Illinois was fighting for a chance to get in the playoff with Penn State that year, I would say, you know what? Illinois is in. If everything else looks about the same, Illinois should get in.
That's what we're saying.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
So we're taking... I don't know. I don't know if I don't value
so bad.
I don't value the head-to-head as much as everybody else.
Oh, what does Ken Palm say? PFF.
Screw Ken Palm.
Lost Dylan some money in college basketball, it sounds like.
Yeah, bad. His stuff is awful. I don't know where he gets it.
No, he's a direct feed into Vegas sports books. That's all he is.
Whatever it is, it's disgusting. It should be. You want to talk about collusion? Ken Palm should be collusion. I hate Ken Palm.
Now we're gonna roll in a Feast Week preview.
Oh yeah, Dylan, we might need to get you on the Feast Week preview.
No, we don't need to do it. We don't need to do it.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about some football then. We've got Ohio State, Indiana. Ohio State's up to a 12.5-point favorite right now. The total's at 51.5. The game's in Columbus. Word on the street is we might be getting a little cold weather game, potential snow game.
You're lying.
Potential snow game. I'm seeing
hope it's not
30.
Fake snow. We've had some fake snow run-ins.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm seeing 38 on here, so it might be just freezing rain, which is almost worse. But we got Ohio State minus 12.5. Dylan, I'll let you start here.
So I'll preface this by saying no one in the country, no one in the world has been more right about Indiana than I have. There's nobody. And I said in the Big Ten preview show, well, they were my underrated team. They were my best bet. Mm-hmm. I said, hey, look out. Ohio State's going to find themselves in a really sneaky spot here, looking ahead to Michigan, which is not much of a look ahead now, against this Indiana team coming off of a bye. And it's going to be a tough spot. Here's what I want to say during this discussion, because I already know what Carter's going to say. Indiana hasn't played anybody. So can we get that out of the way? I know Indiana has not played anybody.
We've done that song and dance.
We've done the song and dance. I know they haven't played anybody. So all the stats I'm going to read off, Indiana has not played anybody. I'm afraid I'm going to need verbal confirmation from Carter before I move on.
It's like you're asking me if I can sit in an emergency exit row, and I say I'll help out in an emergency, but I definitely am like, dude, if that happens, y'all are screwed.
Makes me feel so much better when there's like an obese, like 75-year-old sitting in the exit row, and it's like, will you aid in the need of an emergency? And it's like, I feel great about this.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
That's a great analogy. Indiana has the 106th strength of schedule, according to ESPN. Their first game against a pro-level defense, they struggled, right? And I understand we can say whatever we want about Michigan. there are 3 NFL caliber players on that defensive line. No Will Johnson, sure, in the backfield, but they struggled against their first test against big boys, is what I'll say. But Ohio State has struggled with teams worse than Michigan. They struggled with Nebraska. They struggled, I understand it was for a quarter. They struggled against Northwestern last week. I think the key to this game, you know what? Position groups. We're going to position groups.
He's delaying the inevitable.
Quarterback, Indiana. Running back, Ohio State. No, now why are we laughing?
No, I'm just ready for this. That's all.
Okay, all right.
Excited.
Wide receiver, Indiana, small edge. Very small.
Whoa,
edge.
no.
Very
Stop.
small
That's way off.
No, you're done.
Very small edge.
Done.
Okay.
No, not small edge. No.
Okay. No, you give me the reasoning. I'm guessing
Ohio State skill position players, two heads and shoulders above Indiana's. Come on.
I gave you running backs. Yeah, I'll give you running backs. Their running backs are better.
You said
than
their
Indiana's.
running backs suck.
I don't think they're as good as everybody makes them out to be.
They've been better the last few weeks.
No.
Last few weeks they turned it around.
No, I'm taking Ohio State's wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, give me a second. Actually, no, let's keep going. I disagree with you. I'm not going to get out the stats, but I'm telling you I'm not pulling this out of my butt. You get Jeremiah Smith, 84, 85 rated, but then you have Egbuka, 70-something, and then Carnell Tate. It's not. You can take your trash touchdowns against Northwestern and shove them where the sun don't shine. I don't care about that.
But then what about all of Indiana's trash touchdowns then? If you're
every
saying,
single one this season?
What did I say before we started talking, Carter? What did I say?
But you said that you can't all of a sudden trash Ohio State for getting trash touchdowns against Northwestern. All of
PFF
Indiana's
grades,
touchdowns are against Northwestern.
PFF grades adjust for opponent. So whether you want to sit here and say they played a bad or good team, they adjust for that. So
all right, PFF and Ken Palm on a neutral field. What's the line?
Oh, PFF by a billion.
Oh, give me Ken Palm. Give me Ken Palm. I got money on Ken Palm.
I should have had this game pulled up. I can't even find. Oh, there it is. Okay, hold on a second.
I have it pulled up right here. I'm looking at the same PFF grades you are.
Okay, so Carnell Tate said, let's look at. Yeah, I got 278 guys right here for Indiana, and then you have Cross at a 66. You have Jeremiah Smith, and then you got Tate at a 70 and Egbuka. I'm not sitting here and saying they're miles better, but Indiana, it's not like that. Ohio State's guys are just blowing Indiana's out of the water. You're not going to.
If you're talking about talent on each side, I think they kind of are.
Yeah. All right, we'll see.
Keep going.
Offensive line, Indiana. Ohio State's banged up. Still banged up. Defensive line, Ohio State. Secondary, Ohio State. I'll give them their credit there. I think the key to success here again is going to be how Will Howard performs under pressure, because we know Curtis Rourke performs well under pressure. He's the top-rated quarterback. He clears the second guy by 10 points, and he's slightly better when blitzed compared to the four-man rush, which I think is huge. Jim Knowles likes to draw up that blitz sometimes. He didn't really do it against Penn State. Will Howard, an abysmal 53 PFF rating when pressured, and Indiana has the 4th best pass rush unit. I think that's a big point going here for Indiana. If they can pressure Will Howard, make him make some bad decisions. We've seen Nebraska was a game that comes to mind where they were able to get pressure. The closest defensive unit Ohio State has played to Indiana, I would say, is Oregon, which they were able to. I mean, Will Howard had a heck of a day. I was proven wrong. But Ohio State still had their starting left tackle against Oregon. And I think that's a huge part here. He is no longer with them. He's injured. I think it's
What about
very
against
hard.
Penn State?
What was that?
Was he playing against Penn State?
No, he wasn't.
Okay.
So it's tough here. Normally I come into these games thinking, I did think Oregon was going to blow out Ohio State. I did think that Penn State was going to beat Ohio State. I can't do it here. I think Ohio State wins. I don't think they blow them out. I think it's a touchdown game, but I think Ohio State wins. I think the key player to look out for here is Chase McLaughlin. The 2 games that have been close, Chase McLaughlin has graded out sub 50, and if he has a poor game, I think maybe that's how Indiana gets it done. If they can get to Will Howard, I just don't know. I'm not as confident about this one. If I had to take a side, I would take Indiana in the points. I can't take Indiana to win. I hate
Why-
it. We're going to get
why
no
is this-
views.
Okay, if you think the position groups and everything is a lot closer than it is, why is this a 12.5-point spread?
I don't think people are. I think people still doubt Indiana. I think they're better. I don't think they should be a 12-point underdog. I've already taken them. I got a bad number, 10.5.
So you think
But-
Vegas is wrong?
Oh, I think Vegas is wrong 25 times a week. Hey, if you check my bet slips, you'd be astonished to see how much I think Vegas is wrong.
Well, you
But-
didn't think that with BYU. Anyways.
Well, don't even get me started there. You guys don't even know where Vegas is.
And they shouldn't, Dylan.
Yeah, right. They shouldn't. I shouldn't either. I think Ohio State wins this game. It's not what you expect from me. We're going to get no views this week, but I do think Indiana keeps it close. I think they lose by touchdown.
So Indiana or Ohio State wins 10-9?
I actually think this will be a high scoring game.
Okay.
Really?
I think it'll
51.5
be a
total?
bit of a shootout.
What if we get snow?
Snow helps the offense.
Okay, there you go. Connor, thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I'll be kind of quick here. This one's pretty simple for me. It just so happens Indiana's last game was against the only, as Dylan said, big boy defense they played this year against Michigan. You look at some of the numbers from that Michigan game. Indiana lost the time of possession 33 to 27 minutes. They only had 40 total rush yards, which does include a few sacks, but still couldn't get it done against Michigan's front seven. Indiana generated 0 sacks. They allowed 4 to Michigan, and Indiana only scored 3 points in the second half, 18 total yards in the second half versus Michigan, and they ended up winning that game. You look at the stats for Michigan's defense, they're 31st in opponent yards per game, 36th in yards per play. Ohio State is second nationally in yards per game and opponent yards per play. This Ohio State defense, I don't think there's an argument. It's head and shoulders better than any defense Indiana's played thus far this year. And I'm not even going to be on the point that, Indiana hasn't played anybody. I'm looking at this just from a one-game lens of what I've seen so far. The one defense Indiana played that was any kind of good caliber was Michigan, and they really struggled, especially in the second half. I think Ohio State waxes them here. I think this is a blowout. I think Ohio State wins by 3 scores. I've done the song and dance too many times where there's a huge favorite, and I'm like, that's too many points, like the underdog, like, it's Navy, Notre Dame, Navy's going to keep it close, or, Georgia, no way, they covered 10 versus Tennessee. And almost every time the big favorite wins, I think Ohio State wins by 20, 25 points.
I love it. I love it, Ben.
Seriously, I don't think it's close.
I think this is a game that I think Indiana keeps interesting for a half. I do like Indiana's. If we're looking at coaches, I like Cignetti over Ryan Day. I think he's a better coach.
Yes.
I think I like Indiana's quarterback better. I just think that Ohio State's defensive line, it's just a different beast that Indiana really hasn't seen this year. This is one of those games where I think it's easy to kind of buy into Indiana, but then whenever we watch games like this, we always within the first few minutes go, oh no.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like I should have known. Like the guys go out for the coin toss, right? It's like you got a lineman, a linebacker, a receiver, and the quarterback, and they're standing next to each other, and you go, oh my gosh, those Ohio State guys look like they're in a different.
They can start for the Panthers tomorrow.
Yes, they look
Well, they
look like a. They look like they're in a different.
Dylan sitting here. How is the barrier for being a good team is you can start on the Panthers tomorrow?
we're sitting here and listen. Okay, we're talking about Indiana like they're southeastern Missouri. We're talking about them like we're Louisiana Monroe.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that there are 6 teams in this country that are playing a different sport than everyone else. I think Ohio State's one of those teams. The recruiting matters. Recruiting matters. They've just got guys on that defense that Indiana is not going to be able to do anything about. I think Indiana, because of the coaching and quarterback advantage, are able to keep it somewhat competitive. I think Ohio State gets a late touchdown to make it 34-20, but I do think we watch this game and go, Indiana's hanging out in there because they've got a good quarterback, they've got a great coach, but they just don't quite have the guys to fully pull this off, and Ohio State pulls away at the end.
First off, okay, listen, Ben, none of this is against you. None of this is against you.
No, yep, here we go.
We just sat here and mulled over 15 different teams for a college football playoff, and we're talking about it being 6 above everybody else, and we're including Ohio State in that?
I think Ohio State is clearly, from an athlete level, has players. Like, I mean, you watch teams like Indiana, you watch teams like BYU, these teams that aren't recruiting 4 and 5 stars every year. And when they go against these teams that have all 4 and 5 stars, they don't win. Ever.
I hate to break it to you, Ben. This is not recruiting. This is Ryan Day getting that James Wexner, Epstein, dirty money and cashing checks wherever he sees a player that could ruin a locker room but maybe win some games. This is not recruiting from Ohio State.
It doesn't matter where they come from. I don't care.
I'm just saying. You said recruiting. That's all I'm
yes,
saying.
I admit the brand.
Judkins.
The brand is what recruits. I'm not saying Ryan Day is like a great recruiter.
Sure,
like,
okay.
For sure. But like I've watched
Getting
games,
guys
like
to your
an example, right, is like I've watched games where it's like, okay, Virginia Tech is 7-1 going to this game hosting Clemson. And immediately you're like, oh, they're hanging in there, but they just don't have the guys to pull this off. I think it's a similar thing. I think Indiana has a respectable showing. I just think specifically Ohio State's defensive line is going to overwhelm Indiana's offensive line because I just think they're more athletic. And like, I just think they're just playing a different sport than Indiana is.
There's
and
a
that's
reason
not an
it's been
insult
10
to
and a half.
Indiana.
There's a reason it's gone from 10.5 to 13 now almost. Ohio State is going to wax them.
Yeah, and this isn't like Nebraska or Northwestern where they're like, we're just going to walk in here. There's going to be some deal of respect for Indiana that's going to require more preparation.
Connor,
I think
Ben,
they come out ready to go, win 34-20.
Connor, Ben, can we have a talk real quick without Dylan here?
Of course, I'd love to. Sidebar.
Who in the hell has Indiana played?
You better not. Yeah, Dylan, stay muted for a second. Yeah, I agree, Carter. I think you're right.
Who
like Dylan
have
said,
they played?
106 strength of schedule according to ESPN. Like Dylan said, you know who's next in the top 10? Oregon with they're 43rd. That's how big of a disparity there is in the top 10 teams. Just saying. That has to be accounted for.
And guess what? You talk about you mention all these stats, Dylan. I understand strength of schedule and the data is all accumulated and whatnot, but it's different. Getting in a game where you're playing against Purdue and you're getting pressured is a little bit different than when you're getting pressured against Ohio State and the entire world is watching.
And you're on the road.
Can I offer a scenario?
Go for it.
What if he doesn't get pressured? Right, this offensive line for Indiana is much better than Ohio State's, and I understand Jack Sawyer.
But do we know that?
Yes, we know that. We know that. If you've watched Ohio State, we do know that.
It's not hard to keep a clean pocket against Rutgers and Northwestern and the bottom Michigan State. Come on,
Nebraska. Why don't we take a look at their pass block rating versus Nebraska? The same exact defensive line Ohio State has played. And Ohio State couldn't do jack squat.
They had 18 yards against Michigan in the second half. Indiana did.
Okay,
18 total yards, and they won that game, and they shouldn't have because Michigan's offense is like my local high schools. But that's the only reason they won.
But let's say Ohio State's offensive line doesn't have a great day. Like, I mean, at least for Indiana, Ohio State definitely doesn't have skill players with talent and athleticism that they could just get the ball to and just win the game. But we're just going to throw screens to Jeremiah Smith. We're going to get Judkins and Henderson the ball in space.
Here's the problem, Ben. Will Howard has shown us time and time again when he's pressured, he does not make the screen passes. He doesn't make the 2-yard passes. He sails them 3 feet over his head. We've seen that time and time again. This is not a foreign thing. And here's what...
It's kind of easy to get pressure against Northwestern, Purdue, Rutgers.
Hey, you know what, Carter? I don't think Indiana's played anybody. Can we talk about that for a second?
I don't think so either.
This is great. Oh, this is great.
This is elite stuff.
Can we not entertain a world where this is second or third best team that Ohio State has played? Oregon by far being number one. And then I think Penn State and Indiana are interchangeable. For the Oregon game, Jack Sawyer on a milk carton did absolutely nothing. There's no world where that happens again. This is the second or third best offensive line that they're going to have played.
Wait, what happened in the Penn State game?
I don't know his pressure numbers off the top of my head.
Okay.
Do you?
No, I don't. I'm just asking you because
Ohio State
you're pinpointing to a one-game sample size. You like that, huh?
Carter, does Penn State have more or less talent than Indiana?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. Like, I would think so if you look at a 24/7 composite. Shout out Adam Stanko. If you look at a 24/7 sports composite recruiting rankings, I would assume so. But I really can't tell you because we haven't seen this team play anybody. That has, I'm sorry, that's going to affect me. That's going to matter in my decision making when I say who's going to win this game. What's my pick here? I think Ohio State wins by 10.
I think it's more than 10. I think it's 3 scores. Ohio State wins by 3 scores. Clip that.
But I want Indiana to win, but it's like I'm going to be rooting for them on Saturday.
Oh, I will too.
I've seen this game. I've seen this story.
But
in years of watching college football, the Indianas in this game never win. The Ohio States win 10 out of 10 times.
But you made a point here, and I'm surprised Dylan didn't hound this point a little more. Curtis Ignetti's a better coach than Ryan Day.
Oh, 100%. It's not even close.
And
I agree.
What happens if this game is tight, 20-20, 2 minutes left? Who do you trust? Genuinely, who do you trust in this spot? I don't think there's a right answer here.
Oh, well, Signetti's only been coaching against, JMU's opponents and Purdue's and Northwestern's. He hasn't coached against a team like Ohio State, so I don't know why we're even coming to this conclusion.
But genuinely,
they haven't played anybody.
Dylan, you look at the quarterback situation. Who do you trust with 2 minutes left, tie ball game? I think that's an interesting point here.
That's very easy. We've seen it with Will Howard.
Right, and that's what I said. Those are the two things working in Indiana's favor specifically. I think everything else is shifted in Ohio State's favor, but I do think with Indiana, if you're going to pick Indiana to win this game, to keep it close, it's the coach, it's the quarterback having advantages there. I know that's massive. I know Dylan's going, well, yes, the quarterback head coach combo being better is massive. But I just think the athletic and talent discrepancy everywhere else is going to be an issue.
For this to even be close, Will Howard has to have 3 or 4 turnovers. That's the only way this is a single-digit game.
How do you explain the Nebraska game that was close with 1 or 2 turnovers? Like, you can't, and you're not going to tell me that Nebraska's better than Indiana.
No, I would never do that.
So why would it take 3 or 4 turnovers?
Well, no, I'm kidding.
Talk about head-to-head matchups. Here's the deal. You know what? You guys have made me mad. Halfback dive. Dylan, just run the halfback dive. Run a halfback dive. Quarterback sneak through the tackles. Indiana wins. They beat Ohio State. I can't.
You don't believe it.
But
you don't believe it.
That's not no. But Nebraska, it was close. But has Indiana beaten a team like Colorado? I'm kidding. I'm just being a jerk at this point.
Coming up next.
Real quick, I guess there's one point here. Dylan, you like to use this, like look ahead spots. Or Ohio State coming off a bye with a look ahead to Penn State when they played Nebraska. So should we put that much stock into that Nebraska game?
What?
Ohio State had a look ahead spot to Penn State when they played Nebraska. I love this.
I don't know. Team like Ohio State, I think that they should be coming out for every game. I don't think they can. They don't have any gimmies.
Oh, but Michigan,
No one's brought up Michigan. Everybody's talking, you're like the commenters. Michigan's so bad. Buddy, I didn't bring up Michigan.
Look at that guy's flag in the background. Of course he'd say that.
Oh, that was so fun. All right, score predictions, Dylan.
Indiana 33, Ohio State 30. I have to.
You don't believe that.
I believe it. I do believe
No, you
it.
don't.
I've sat here and listen, I've looked at this PFF chart of Indiana offense versus Ohio State defense, and I've convinced myself.
Connor.
Ohio State 31, Indiana 13. I don't think it's close. I think we know from the first quarter what's going to happen.
Ben.
Ohio State 34-20.
I'm going to go Ohio State 35, Indiana 23. Just a weird score. Looks like it's safety or something weird.
I think it's too high scoring. You're giving it. I think Indiana's going to struggle to move the ball.
I think Ohio State gets out early and then Indiana gets some garbage points.
I don't believe it. Ohio State 24, Indiana 21.
Okay, there's the real answer.
All right. Oh, hey. Oh, look, a little flip flop. You got a little flip flop going on. All right.
Hey, election's over. Election's over.
Election's over, Kamala.
I'm struggling here because what if Indiana does win? Oh, the victory lap would be so sweet.
That's almost like missing out on Will Dissly first touchdown.
Yeah, but you don't. This is assault in the loons right now, man. Dylan's just getting pounded right now. Pause. All right, let's move on. BYU versus Arizona State. 100K fine. Real quick, BYU Arizona State. Right now the line is 3.5. The game is in Tempe, Arizona. This is weirdly a play-in game for the Big 12 title game. The 13th preseason ranked team in the Big 12 and the 16th ranked team preseason are playing for a spot in the Big 12 title game. The winner will almost guarantee a spot there. Who do we have in this spot? I'll start with you, Ben.
I've struggled with this. I do think I hate to say it, but I think I would love Arizona State, frankly, in a blowout if BYU had somehow miraculously came out with that Kansas win. But I do think BYU has not been playing good football the last month or so. This is a team that, although the defense has been really good as of late, it's not forcing as many turnovers as it was in the first half of the season. I think that's a major issue. I think they're going to need to force a couple of turnovers here. And also, BYU's offense has been very good at controlling time of possession, long drives. But it has almost resulted in they've almost went too far in that direction, and they're just not getting enough points, especially in the last couple of weeks. Red zone execution has been very poor. I do think winning against Utah, I do think there is a natural, obviously coaches and players are going to make adjustments, but I think the lack of urgency is an issue when you win. There's just not going to be that urgency to make changes. I think there's going to be I think it was a massive, massive wake-up call for BYU this past Saturday. This is a BYU team that has generally been, especially in the first half of the season, just crushing these teams. I do think having a loss helps them out a lot. Man, it's I'm going to go BYU 27-24. I do think they figure it out. I think I'm going to say a 2-minute drive, again, by BYU's offense wins this game. But, man, it's scary as a BYU fan for sure. And I'd be lying if I said that wasn't there wasn't bias in that pick. But I do think BYU can get it done. No bias. I think I'm favoring Arizona State by a field goal. I see the lines at 3.5, 3. I wouldn't want to touch it, but I think Vegas, I like BYU, but don't feel very strongly. But I feel strongly it's a close game.
So Vegas knows what they're talking about when it comes to BYU, is what I'm hearing.
This week.
Yeah. They kind of have the last few weeks, to be honest.
Yeah, they have.
Dylan, what's the call here?
I'm going to spare you guys. So, first of all, I want my credit. I did watch BYU to completion last week. To completion. That game started 10-15, right? 10-15. I stayed up all night to watch BYU. So, Dylan, you don't watch BYU. You're not certified to talk about BYU. Abby and I stayed up and watched the whole BYU game last week. That's not because I had Kansas money line. Looking at this matchup, you have an Arizona State team 8-2 against the spread. BYU 7-3 against the spread. Both kind of impressive, which tells you they're both a little bit undervalued. I see even matchups up front on both sides of the ball for both teams, whether it's BYU's offensive line versus Arizona State's defensive line, vice versa, even matchups. I'm going to take the running back with the cooler name. Give me Scattaboo, right?
If he plays, he might not play.
Are you serious?
He's been out since, November 19th, I think I wrote down, or the 16th. He's been out since the Kansas State game.
I'm pretty sure he played this past... I think he played this past weekend.
I was going to say, BYU, this is a game, you get some morphine shots. You get some oxycodone. You make sure you play this game against the Cougs.
He did play this week against Kansas State.
I'm looking at the wrong number. That's on me. You're right. He did play against Kansas
25
State.
carries for 73 yards.
Yeah, you're right.
Not the best game.
Yeah,
for some reason, I looked at the date and I was like, it's October. Nah, you're right. He did play.
Kansas State, their passing defense, their secondary is one of the worst in the country. So I don't really take much stock into running back stats against Kansas State because all you have to do is throw on them all day. And your quarterback's going to have unbelievable numbers. Connor, what's your play here?
Yeah, so here's the thing with BYU, and I don't know where I saw this. It might have been Chase said something on Twitter. Ben, you might have retweeted something. It was about BYU's opening drive to start the second half. Over 10 minutes, it resulted in a 35-yard field goal over a 10-minute drive. And I've actually watched a decent amount of BYU this year. I watched that whole game this weekend too, so give me my flowers. It seems like they've played differently when they're ahead or there's a little bit of pressure on them as far as like, oh, we were undefeated. We're playing differently now that we're undefeated against Kansas and this is a tight game. And it seems like they're not as aggressive from at least what I've seen. You guys are the experts.
On offense.
Yes. Now that they've got the loss out of the way, I think the bounce back spot here is what I'm looking at. I'm taking BYU plus 3.5. I think this team is a lot better than what people are giving them credit for, especially after the loss to Kansas. I think now that they've lost that game and the pressure's off of like, oh, we're undefeated and we're so uptight and we got to be sure everything's perfect, I think they're going to play a little more loose against this Arizona State team. I like BYU to win out right here. I really do. And the one thing I would say about BYU is, do they know how to be good? It would be my question. Do they know how to be a good football team? I think with all the stakes and the pressure, they play worse. So I'm a little concerned about that. But now that the loss is out of the way, I like BYU.
I like BYU here in this spot. I do. And I liked Kansas before. I liked Oklahoma State before. I've been fading BYU a lot this season. I love BYU in the spot. The wake-up call is real. The wake-up call is happening. I in this game, I think I actually trust Jake Retzlaff if it's a close ball game. I actually do. We've seen him make big-time 2-minute drives to win football games and pressure-filled spots. I mean, it doesn't get in the state of Utah. It doesn't get more pressure-filled than you're down 2 points with no timeouts. You got to go score on the road against Utah. It doesn't get bigger.
Holding call helps.
That was hold. It was a hold. Get the right angle there. It was a hold. But anyhow, and we talk about this Arizona State team. Credit to them, man. Kenny Dillingham. I was at Big 12 Media Days. No one gave a crap. Not there. I think he was just standing around waiting to be interviewed for like an hour. No one talked to him. No one cared. And now they're sitting here with a. It is kind of sad. But now they have a play-in spot for the Big 12 title game, and he's going to be the center of attention outside of Dion, obviously, because Colorado, if they can win out.
They could have 3 wins, and he'll still be the center of attention. Come on.
A sneaky thing here, Arizona State hasn't really blown anybody out this season. Yeah, Oklahoma State, Wyoming, whatever, they're bottom dwellers, and BYU close game against Oklahoma State, I understand. But you look at some of their games this year, they barely beat Kansas. They lost to Cincinnati. They barely beat UCF. Kansas State, solid win last week, for sure, no doubt about that. Yeah, they've been squeaking out. These are two of the same teams, essentially. Give me the team that's getting the points in this spot. Give me the team that has blown out multiple teams this year and has won against teams like SMU on the road. And I trust Retzlaff in this spot. There's some other things that I won't dive into that makes me like BYU a lot in this spot. Give me BYU 35, Arizona State 28.
I like it. And Connor, you're talking about this is a team with the pressure, like the undefeated team that, right, you've got to win the Big 12 now. You're undefeated. I almost think this loss, right, they're underdogs going into Arizona State. Even if they do win, I think going in, assuming BYU wins these 2 games, assuming Colorado wins these 2 games, Colorado's favored by 5.5. Everyone's picking Colorado in that spot, right? Like, I feel like that's going to be a thing, and I do think BYU thrives off those situations. They're way better than this team they're playing in the Big 12 title game, so they better win. BYU loses those spots a lot. That's definitely something that's not only present this year, that's definitely something that's been an issue with Kalani Sitake at BYU. He's a very good coach, but if we're talking cons or things that he's not great at, that's one of them.
Score predictions, Dylan, go, quick fire.
Arizona State 31, BYU 24.
Connor.
I'm going to go BYU 27, Arizona State 17.
I love it. Ben.
BYU 27, Arizona State 24.
BYU 35, Arizona State 28. Like I said, real quick, let's steamroll through some upset watch and get a parlay we've been going over today. It's been a long show. We'll go quickly through here. Let's do rapid fire. Indiana at Ohio State. Ohio State 12.5-point favor. Upset watch, Dylan. What's the level 1 through 10?
7.
7. I agree. I think it. I'll go 6.5. Connor.
Just got to be different.
Yeah, I got like a 4 or a 5. I mean, I don't think this game's going to be close.
Ben,
Which one did you say again? Sorry.
Indiana, Ohio State.
I'll say 5.
Ole Miss at Florida. Ole Miss 10-point favorite in this spot. DJ Lagway playing. This Florida team, man. I know in the swamp, Lane Kiffin primed to blow a game like this. Guys, this is an 8 on the upset watch.
Yeah, I was literally going to say 8. This is
8.
I said at the beginning of the year, Florida's going to ruin a couple team seasons. They did it with LSU. You say ruin, I guess. Maybe not ruin, but yeah, Florida could do this.
Well, an Ole Miss lost, they're out of the playoff, so it would be ruined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ole Miss, yes. I meant LSU last week, which
Oh,
you
yeah.
could argue didn't ruin, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
wild.
Upset watch here. This is a classic Lane Kiffin. We're riding high. Ole Miss, everybody's got him penciled in the playoff, and then they just blow this at Florida.
And DJ Lagway, man, they're a different football team when he plays.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. SMU at Virginia. SMU 9.5-point favorite. Dylan doesn't seem very happy about this one.
I'm going 3.
What if it was on the CW?
That
8.
changes things. that changes things. That at least doubles it.
It's on ESPN too.
3.
Okay, Connor.
Tony Muskett starting, confirmed or no?
Ben, I don't.
Not confirmed, but he better be.
I don't think it matters. I think this is a 2. I don't think there's. I think SMU rolls.
Ben.
0.
6.
Okay.
I believe in Tony Muskett. I liked what I saw.
Oh,
Tony
man.
Calandra.
And
Tony Calandra starts. We might have a different story.
they're going to do it, and then Tony Elliott, they're going to make a bowl game and extend him 4 years and ruin my life.
Yeah, and then they get mollywopped by Virginia Tech next week, which will be hilarious. Minnesota, Penn State. Penn State on the road, 12.5-point favorite, Dylan.
This is a 10, baby. People are sleeping on PJ Fleck and the Golden Gophers. I bet it already, plus 12.5 money line. Listen, this Minnesota team is like 7-2-1 against the spread. People really are sleeping on this team, and we can have a conversation. I understand this is supposed to be rapid fire. At Illinois, beating them, they were ranked at the time. Like, that's something. It's something for Minnesota. I think that this is a game that Penn State might sleep through, and PJ Fleck has the boys going. I think Minnesota wins this game.
I love it.
Wow.
I'll go 8.
Yeah, I'll give it a 7 or an 8 too. And if Minnesota does win, Carolina beat this Minnesota team, so we can start talking about Mac Brown making the playoff. We can start with that A block next week. No, I think you guys are right. This is a classic James Franklin. Like, I don't know if it's look ahead, but sleepwalk is the right word, Dylan. I think you're right. I think this is one where they kind of underestimate.
I'll
Ben?
say 7.
7. Love it. Colorado, Kansas, at Arrowhead, actually.
Sound the alarm. This
10 out of 10.
This is a letdown spot. This is a letdown spot for Colorado. The world, everybody's riding high. Colorado, everybody's making up scenarios to get them in the college football playoff. I think Kansas, we already touched on it, not as bad as their record may make it out to be. Beat BYU last week in a huge win. This is a scary spot for Deion in Colorado. I think this is a terrifying spot. I think the upset meter's got to be at a 10. It's peaking out right now.
I'm rooting heavy for Kansas in this spot. I think it's a full 10 as well. Kansas is like the Grim Reaper of the Big 12. I think Brett Yormark wants Lance Leipold gone out of here ASAP because he's ruining. Kansas is ruining all these Big 12 teams' resumes completely.
Jalen Daniels is the Grim Reaper.
Yeah, that's what we're going to come to. 10 out of 10 on that one. Let's keep going. We got here Army versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame minus 14 in this spot.
0.
Yeah, it's not
0.
happening. I
We've
wish it
seen
would,
this.
but it's not happening.
4, but I wish it was an 8, but 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the 3. Love you, Army. Love you, but
Shout out Bryson Daly. I just don't see it.
last one. A&M at Auburn. A&M is only 2.5-point favorite.
This is a weird one. I guess Marcel Reed's still starting. They've had the quarterback thing all year. 7. It wouldn't shock me if it's the end of the third quarter and it's tied.
It has to be at minimum of 7 with this spread. Dylan,
Peyton Thorne, seriously, we're gonna do this. I can't. I've watched that guy at Michigan State too many times. He's like, you want to talk about Cam Rising being old, or you want to talk about Jack Tuttle being old? I can't do it with Peyton Thorne. I'm gonna go 5 just because I don't think Texas A&M's that good either.
For a 4-6 Auburn team, is there a such thing as a look-ahead spot to the Iron Bowl?
I don't think you can have a look-ahead spot if you're under 500.
But revenge for last year, maybe.
Because I think
Maybe.
that game's going to be played a lot closer than people think.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But this
Was
one,
last year too.
I still think A&M. I still think A&M wins, but I would never bet this game. All right, that does it from us. Parlay quickly, Dylan.
Minnesota plus, I think it's 11.5 now. I already
12.
said I think they win the game.
Yeah.
We got 12.5 for Minnesota, Penn State. All right, Connor.
You guys can veto this if you want to. I like BYU plus 3.5.
Love it, Ben.
Okay.
I'll do Kansas money line.
Big game.
I want it bad.
Big game.
I want it bad.
Big game money.
I want it bad. Because if this parlay hits, my personal Karter and I are happy anyway.
Yeah. I want to go gross here. I need Connor's approval. I need a parent's permission slip from Connor.
All right, let's hear it, son.
Carolina at Boston College on the CW. I have to go over. I have to. It's in my blood. I have to. I don't care. I think it's great Castellanos isn't there.
Oh, okay. All right. As long as
Really,
you know
that's
that.
what I was going to ask. Is that if Castellanos was playing, I would say over 70 points, but it doesn't scare you with the backup?
Absolutely not. We saw Boston College put up 4 touchdowns against SMU this week.
That's true, and we did just give up 24 to Wake. One of them was a garbage touchdown, but still, okay. I don't
Garbage
like
touchdowns
it. I
still
don't hate
count
it.
with the total. Garbage
That's
touchdowns
true.
all points are created equally with the totals.
I think Carolina offense is feeling a rhythm. Amari and Hampton had like 250 rushing yards. I love it. Let's do it.
I have to. It's in my blood. The CW.
I see 56.5.
Yes. Carolina, Boston College. The number has a 5 in front of it. I have to do it. I have to.
All right, let's
All right,
ride.
That's the parlay this week. Make sure to follow at KarterKast on KarterKast on everything. Like and subscribe. Download SeatGeek. Use code KarterKast. $20 off your first purchase. Make sure to tune into the NFL shows and everything. We got college basketball and NBA stuff coming very soon. Make sure to check out that. We'll see y'all next time. Bye bye.